In the ancient heart of Mesopotamia, the mighty king Nimrod ascended to the throne of Babylon, adorning himself with gold and silk while dreaming of an empire that would defy the very heavens themselves with his absolute sovereignty. Driven by an insatiable hunger for eternal fame, Nimrod commanded his people to construct a colossal tower of brick and mortar that would pierce the clouds and challenge the creator of the vast universe. With the crown of vanity resting upon his brow, the king demanded that his subjects worship him as a god, gathering them beneath his golden throne to pledge their absolute loyalty to his earthly authority. The prophet Ibrahim arrived as a beacon of truth, clad in simple wool and standing tall before the tyrant to proclaim the existence of a single God, which ignited a fierce and dangerous spiritual confrontation. Consumed by rage at the challenge to his rule, Nimrod rose from his seat of ivory and commanded his guards to bring forth two men, demonstrating his supposed power by ordering the death of one and the freedom of the other. When Ibrahim challenged the king to bring the sun from the west instead of the east, Nimrod stood speechless as the profound truth of his mortality and limited power struck his arrogant heart. Determined to crush the descent, the tyrant commanded his soldiers to gather massive amounts of wood to ignite a blaze so large that it would consume his rival in a terrifying display of his ruthless punishment. As the inferno roared toward the sky, a miracle unfolded before the eyes of the stunned onlookers, who watched in silent disbelief as Ibrahim walked through the flames, completely untouched by the scorching fury. Refusing to accept his defeat and blinded by his own pride, Nimrod accelerated the construction of the tower, pushing his workers to the brink of physical collapse under the oppressive weight of his broken ambition. A sudden and chaotic storm erupted over Babylon, scattering the builders as they found themselves speaking in fragmented tongues, unable to understand one another, while the great tower began to crumble under the divine judgment. In the solitude of his darkened palace, the king began to tremble as the weight of his failing empire and the collapse of his grand designs shattered his once unshakable confidence. Nimrod summoned his heavily armored legions in a desperate attempt to maintain control, but his soldiers sensed the shift in fortune as their once feared leader seemed to shrink in the shadow of his own decline. A mysterious and relentless suffering took hold of the king as a piercing headache began to consume his mind, leaving him at the mercy of physicians who stood powerless before his worsening condition. An invisible tormentor appeared in the form of a tiny buzzing creature that relentlessly hunted the king, turning his royal chambers into a prison of unending sound and psychological agony. The man who once demanded worship as a god was now forced to beg his servants to strike his head with hammers in a desperate and futile effort to silence the sound that drove him toward madness. Lying upon his royal bed, the fallen king gazed out at the scattered ruins of his Tower of Babel, watching as the wind carried away the dust of his vanished legacy and his broken dreams. In the cold silence of his final moments, the buzzing faded into an eternal hush, and the man who ruled with iron and fire passed into the shadows of history, leaving behind only the echoes of his hubris. A small group of faithful servants carried the body of the once mighty ruler to a lonely grave, while the great city of Babylon began its slow descent into the silent pages of the distant past. Nature slowly reclaimed the crumbling stones of the city as the sands of time covered the remnants of the grand towers and the foundations of a kingdom that once dared to stand against the infinite heavens. The legend of Nimrod serves as a timeless warning to all who seek to elevate themselves above the natural order, reminding us that even the greatest empires are but dust in the face of the eternal truth.